There are 5 highly owned players that I think FPL managers need to avoid going into game week 1, and in today's video I'm going to explain exactly why that is the case. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you drop a like. Always aim for 200 on these videos, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So the first player that I think managers need to avoid going into game week 1 is going to be Jordan Pickford. Now I know this one's a little bit controversial because historically he has been such a fantastic pick. Currently coming in at 5.5 million, and he's averaged 155 points over the last 2 seasons. Now, if I gave you 155 points for a goalkeeper, you would take it every day of the week. There's only a few goalkeepers over the past few seasons that actually would deliver more than these points. So over the last few seasons, this has been the guy that you wanted in your team. I think we've always looked for alternatives naturally at a cheaper price at 4.5 million, and he ends up always outscoring them. And it's also worth noting, the good thing about Jordan Pickford is that the opening fixtures are actually quite good. Leeds away, I think that's going to be a tough atmosphere, a tough ground to go to, but I still anticipate Everton to get a result there. Brighton at home I don't think is horrendous. Wolves, Villa, Liverpool, West Ham, it is mixed, but I do think it is a decent run of fixtures to kick off the season. The problem is, he's the joint most expensive goalkeeper in the game. Now, he was one of those where we had a price reveal at the start of the season. And when we saw 5.5 million, we thought that's a fair price because all the other premium goalkeepers will probably be 6 million. But that isn't the case at all. The most expensive goalkeepers in the game are 5.5 million. So whereas in the past, Jordan Pickford, was 5 million and he might be a million cheaper than some of those most expensives, or 0.5. He is now competing on a level playing field with the likes of Alisson, Ederson at Man City, all these sorts of players. So he kind of falls under a different bracket now. We have to consider him amongst those top teams. And the problem is, even though I rate Everton, I think David Moyes will do a good job once again, I still expect them to be in the bottom half of the league. And it begs the question then, do we want to pay this much for a goalkeeper who will accumulate saves, there's no doubt about it, will have his moments where he get a penalty save and those bonus points, but the clean sheets aren't a guarantee in this team. And it's also worth noting, we were eyeing up these Everton defenders, and yes, they have priced them well with Tarkowski and Branthwaite coming in at the same price at 5.5 million. However, with the introduction of the defensive contributions, it makes those defenders, those centre-backs, slightly more tempting because they're good on the bonus points regardless. If they do rack up these defensive contributions, that's another 2 points on top of the clean sheet that will benefit both Pickford and those centre-backs. So then it begs the question, do we actually go for the centre-backs, Branthwaite or Tarkowski, as opposed to Pickford as our goalkeeper? When I look at the pool of players available to us and the potential transfers that may happen, there's a world where we might get someone like a Trafford at 5 million at Man City. And you can also get someone like Robert Sanchez at Chelsea at 5 million. And I think based on that, I think there's enough good goalkeepers at a cheaper price than Pickford to justify going for them in the opening game week as opposed to him. And if you want your Everton coverage, maybe going for the defender and chasing those defensive contribution points where a team like Everton, I do think they will actually quite regularly hit those numbers. So for me, based on the price point, I think Jordan Pickford is an avoid going into game week 1. But again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. So next up is going to be one of the new signings to the Premier League, Frimpong, who of course moved from Bayer Leverkusen to Liverpool in the summer. And from a general transfer perspective, this is a fantastic move, and it makes it really exciting from both a neutral perspective and also from an FPL perspective, because this is a player that has absolutely been brought into this Liverpool team, not necessarily for defensive reasons, but also to influence in the final third. And we can see with his numbers from last season, he averaged 13 attacking returns over the last 2 years. Now again, he did play in a slightly different position when he was under Xabi Alonso at Bayer Leverkusen, much more of a right wing back. So I would argue that these attacking returns might diminish when he does come into the Premier League and plays as a bit more of a traditional right back in this Liverpool team. But the way that Slot's recruited with both Kerkez and Frimpong, I don't think he's going to recruit these kind of first and foremost attacking fullbacks if he's not going to allow them to attack. And we've seen Frimpong at times also play as a right winger for both the national team and Leverkusen. So I think this is one of these sort of players who has an incredibly high ceiling and could actually make a mockery of this 6 million price point. If I'm to look over this in a year's time, would I be surprised if Frimpong was to be one of the highest scoring defenders and he was to almost break some of the records? I actually wouldn't be surprised at that. However, we're not looking to build a team for game week 20. We are looking for game week 1. And for that reason, I think he's actually an avoid. Let me explain why. So first and foremost, I think Connor Bradley isn't just going to be pushed to the sidelines every single game. I think he's a perfectly good right back that slot is trusted at times. And I do think there are going to be occasions where Connor Bradley will either come on around the 60th minute mark or even start certain games if Frimpong, for example, doesn't adjust to the Premier League as quickly as what Arne Slot wants. I personally think Frimpong is kind of ready-made for the Premier League, but it has to be said, when you have a very, very capable player like Bradley, I don't see him just being pushed to the side and not playing any minutes in the opening 10 game week. So I think you have to note that when you buy Frimpong, you are bringing in a slight rotation risk at times. I also would argue that the tough opening fixtures make some Liverpool defenders not as tempting. Bournemouth at home, I think, is good. I think Bournemouth might be a weaker version of themselves from a build-up perspective. They might struggle after losing Huijsen, and now it looks like Zabarnyi to PSG. So I think that is going to be problematic for them. Then Newcastle away in game week 2. That's always a tough place to be. However, if they don't have Alexander Isak, then maybe this is an easier fixture. Arsenal at home, again, a really difficult clash. I wouldn't be wanted to own Liverpool defenders in that particular tie. Then the fixtures start to turn good with Burnley away, Everton at home and Crystal Palace away. So I think there's some mixed fixtures here, but I do think owning a Liverpool defender is not a bad move at all. I just don't think you want one that you could say to yourself might be on the bench in a particular fixture. And finally, I know it's a bit boring, but I would make the argument that maybe Virgil van Dijk is a better pick at the same price point of 6 million. Now, Van Dijk gets kind of overhyped sometimes. I think sometimes we think he gets 6-7 goal contributions from corners. That is not the case. I think he might get 2 goals, 3 goals at best, which you then have to pick your moments. But with the defensive contributions being brought into the game this year, he is one of those players that is right up there from a clearances perspective, from a tackles perspective. And I do see him at times actually reaching that 10 defensive contribution threshold where he will pick up those 2 additional points alongside the clean sheets and importantly, maybe picking up some bonus points. He's a player that's going to play 90 minutes, so he has way more opportunity of hitting those defensive contributions as opposed to someone like Frimpong that could be a 60 or 70 minute sub, which is just not ideal at all. So I know it's really boring, but I think Virgil van Dijk right now is actually a better pick than that of Frimpong. And maybe in 10 game weeks time where we see Kerkez and Frimpong finally integrated into the team, then I think they are going to be the go-to defenders in the game. A quick word on Kerkez, because I haven't included him here. I think Kerkez also falls in a similar bracket because he looks like he is going to be fantastic from an assist perspective. But with Robertson playing over 25 games last year, do we see him being benched every single game? I don't think that will be the case either. So I'm going to also put Kerkez in the same bracket as Frimpong. I'm going to be boring and say actually Virgil van Dijk is the way for this Liverpool defence. So another defender that I'm going to put in the avoid category, and I think this one is going to split opinion big time, is going to be Man City's Ait-Nouri. Again, one of the premium defenders coming in at 6 million and a new boy to this Man City team moving from Wolves. So I think this is definitely one of those players that could be one of the best defenders in the game. I've got to put it out there first and foremost because we've got a proven asset here. Whereas someone like Frimpong, yes, he might be able to translate what he's done in the Bundesliga to the Premier League very quickly. We know for certain that Ait-Nouri has the capability because he's done it over the past few seasons, in particular last year with 11 attacking returns. And I don't see any world where Pep is going to bring in Ait-Nouri and ask him to play as part of a back 3 in some sort of system. I think you bring in Ait-Nouri to hold the touchline and basically play as a winger when you are in possession and allow maybe the left winger like a Marmoush to drift into central zones and kind of dictate the game and also have shots. So I think Ait-Nouri's positioning is going to be really exciting in this Man City team. Again, because he's a new transfer, there's no point me putting up a heat map because we don't know exactly what that will look like in this Man City team. He's only played, minimal minutes in pre-season. So I have put it there that I do also think while he is an avoid for game week 1, he also has the capability of being one of the highest ceiling defenders in the game. So I just wanted to put it out there for you guys because I want to come back to this maybe in 6 months and be like, I was wrong. Ait-Nouri is the guy to own. Could be even better version of that of Vardy, what we saw over the past 2 years. However, the reason why it's an avoid because there are problems with the pick. First up, Pep Roulette. I would argue that at any time, any player is at risk of being rotated in this team. Now, of course, Pep hasn't necessarily invested heavily in the defence. We've still got Vardy, we've still got Ruben Diaz, John Stones whenever he is fit, Akanji, Mateus Nunes. These sorts of players that could easily play in these centre-back roles, but there's very few that can play as a left-back. However, would I be surprised at any time maybe if he does chuck Vardy out there for a 1v1 situation to maybe match up against a tricky person? I don't think that is out of the realms of possibility, especially looking at the games that they do have coming up. Because as I said here, I think there's some tough defensive fixtures. Wolves away, I don't think that's an absolute walkover for Man City. And I still think they have a lot of fundamentals that they need to address. I think some of the signings that they've made, Cherki, Ait-Nouri, isn't improving them defensively at all. And they had real problems last year. Maybe the return of Rodri will bring the control that they just need in that team. But as of right now, I don't see them being completely dominant defensively. Then Spurs in game week 2. I don't see that a walk in the park, especially if I was Thomas Frank, I'd be putting kudos straight on Ait-Nouri and asking him if you're able to defend him. And again, would I be surprised if maybe Pep looks at that and think, oh, Kudus versus Ait-Nouri, he is going to get smoked up in that game. Good chance maybe a more of a centre-back goes out into that left-back role. Could happen. Same again in Mbeumo up against Ait-Nouri in game week 4. Saka up against him in game week 5. I just don't think there are good defensive fixtures. And I would make the argument that maybe avoiding Man City altogether defensively is the way to go. And finally, similar to what I mentioned about Frimpong, maybe if you are going to go for this Man City defence, maybe just go for the safe bet in Vardy. I know, again, I don't think every single player is locked in for minutes, but I do think Vardy is now one of those established defenders where Pep kind of relies on him each and every game, whether it be centre-back or left-back. So I do make the argument that maybe Vardy is the play. I don't think defensive contributions will be a thing with Man City, just the way that they play games. They don't really accumulate them that often. So for game week 1, I just think the fixtures aren't good enough from a clean sheet perspective. And then it really puts an emphasis on Ait-Nouri grabbing these attack and returns. And I just don't see him actually getting enough to justify picking him in the opening 6 game weeks. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I think this will split opinion, but I, for one, will be avoiding Ait-Nouri. So moving into some more attacking players. And the first one we've got here is another transfer, and that is going to be Bryan Mbeumo, who, of course, made his move from Brentford to Man United finally. And he's been priced at 8 million, which is really, really interesting. I do think that some managers would not even have batted an eyelid if he stayed at Brentford at 8 million. I think he would have been a lock still in every single person's team. So it's funny how other people now perceive him moving to, some may argue, a better team, not off the basis of last year, but usually any player that moves to a quote-unquote bigger team at this price point would almost be a lock. But right now, going into game week 1, I believe Bryan Mbeumo is one that we do need to avoid. Now, let's put it out there first and foremost. This is a proven FPL player. This guy has done it every single season. Plays 90 minutes, an absolute joke when it comes to finishing. It just never gets injured. He basically is the perfect FPL player. You can pick him for 38 game weeks. He will play 38 and he will guarantee you goals over the course of the season alongside assists. The problem is, he isn't this Brentford player anymore. We have to look at him as a Man United player. Whereas before at Brentford, he knew exactly what his role is. Brentford knew exactly what they were doing. It was to accumulate big chances on a regular basis. And over the course of the game, he or somebody else would score over that time. We're now going to a Man United team that are very, very unpredictable. Now, yes, the signing of Cunha and Mbeumo can only improve them. They've brought in Premier League quality players to replace those that maybe aren't Premier League quality. So I'm expecting a better Man United team. But I want to see it first and foremost before actually looking to invest in them, because I think there are some hidden gems in this team. Ahmad, Mbeumo, Cunha, I'm also going to put in the same bucket as Mbeumo as an avoid, but Mbeumo's ownership is a lot more than that of Cunha, hence why he's in this list. We also need to consider, whereas last year in Brentford, he was the perfect asset because he played 90 minutes and importantly, a penalty taker. I think Bruno Fernandes will remain the big dog, the penalty taker in this team. So when we take away penalties from Bryan Mbeumo, it does slightly dampen what we can get from him as a ceiling. I also would argue that fixtures are tough. Arsenal at home in game week 1. Yes, Man United sometimes do get a good result against Arsenal, but I'm not looking to have a Man United player for that game. Fulham away, I think, isn't ideal. Burnley is the big one, but some managers are looking at maybe a free hit in game week 3, then that kind of accommodates it. But then Man City, Chelsea, and then Brentford away, I just don't look at those 6 game weeks and ask myself, do I need a Man United player? I personally think actually using these 6 game weeks to use it as almost a watch list period, identify whether Mbeumo or Cunha or another one is the route to go for. I don't think, apart from maybe game week 3, there is going to be significant enough points that is going to damage your overall rank where you're going to need to squeeze Mbeumo into your team. Because, of course, as I mentioned, it's a competitive price point. 8 million. You can only have one of these in your team. If you're going for Salah, Cole Palmer, you can only have one 8 million alongside this. And that has to be 8.5 million Marmoush, Mbeumo at 8, or you come down to some of the cheaper ones. And I would make the argument that maybe even a Morgan Rogers is better value at 1 million cheaper. So I know people love Mbeumo. I love him more than a lot of people. But right now going into this season as a Man United player, I just don't think I could pay the money for him going into game week 1. And finally, we have got the forward that I think managers do need to avoid. And can we please have a moment of silence for Jarrod Bowen, because he has officially been reclassified from a midfielder to a forward. He has had the legs cut off him as an FPL pick, and I'll explain why in a minute. So for those that don't know, midfielder last season, and he's always been a midfielder, moved to a forward because he's operated as a number 9 at times at West Ham with the absence of some key players. However, normally Bowen will play on the right of a front 3, at times as part of a 2 up top. So yes, I get it with him being a potential forward, but at the same time, I think from an FPL perspective, we are now kind of lost a player due to the positioning. Now he comes in at 8 million, which I think is a really good price point. You put him alongside the likes of Mbeumo, even though they are of course a midfielder, then I think he's good. And let's be honest, this is the same sort of player as Mbeumo, proven FPL quality, 24 attack and returns. I wouldn't be surprised again if he does deliver these sorts of returns and we look back and say to ourselves, yes, he got classified as a forward, but these attack and returns are still good enough. We have to remember as well, he is the penalty taker and he is the talisman of West Ham. So he still remains the big dog in that team, and you want these sort of players whenever you are selecting them for your sides. However, as I mentioned, him being classified to a forward means it's 1 less point for a goal and 1 less point because he doesn't get the clean sheets. Now again, bonus points perspective, we'll do a separate video on that. It might actually benefit him in some manner, but I just think the fact that he's lost 2 points straight away from that is just not good for him. Now, I will say this. The fixtures are mixed, and I've put it there. I say they are tough fixtures, but game week 1 away against Sunderland could be fantastic. He could be the best differential in the game. And then they've got Chelsea, Forest, Spurs, Palace, Everton. So I think there are real opportunities for him to score goals. Like, would I be surprised if he scores against Sunderland, scores against Chelsea, maybe nothing against Forest, maybe scores something against Spurs, Palace, like, if he got 3 or 4 goals in the opening 6, I wouldn't be surprised. And then we will be looking back and saying, we overcomplicated it. We saw him move to a forward and kind of ignored him as a pick. The problem is, he's in a really competitive space now with forwards. I think the forwards are finally options once again in FPL. They have been for the last 2 seasons. And him coming in at 8 million means that he's competing up against Solanke and João Pedro, who are both 7.5 million, so slightly cheaper. And of course, then we got some of the big dogs like Watkins at 9. We won't compare him to Isak, of course, as that is 9.5 million or 9 million. Sorry, Isak at 10.5 million. Apologies. And then, of course, we've got the introduction of Ekitike, and we've also got Gyökeres. What price is he going to come in at? So I think Bowen's at a really tricky price point because even though he's a talisman, even though he's on penalties, I think a lot of managers are going to be building their squads, needing to find somewhere to save a bit of money, and they're going to see João Pedro of Chelsea, Solanke of Spurs with better fixtures and probably go, you know what, I'm going to pay 0.5 million less and go for these sort of players. And who knows, Solanke may be the penalty taker at Spurs. So I think we will look back at Bowen and maybe say that we've overcomplicated it a little bit. And I want to say that Bowen, of all of the ones that I've discussed, I understand why managers are going there for game week 1. If you're looking to maybe go for a wild card early on, or you're looking to maybe integrate him in as sort of a transfer strategy, then I kind of get it. I get Bowen for game week 1, but long term, I just think you aren't going to be getting an incredible value pick at 8 million as a forward. So unfortunately, he is going to be the 5th avoid in this video, but please do let me know in the comments, because I get it why Bowen is being considered by managers with that Sunderland fixture. Yes, guys, okay, so that's going to wrap up today's video, looking at the 5 players that I think you should avoid going into game week 1. Again, I might do an updated version of this closer to the deadline, of course, when we get new signings and we learn more from pre-season. But let me know in the comment section, do you agree with my list? Do you think there's ones that should be added to this list? It's always interesting to know. Now, of course, if you did enjoy this video, please do consider dropping a like. And of course, we've got daily content throughout pre-season. So if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Have an amazing day. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.